Welcome, history enthusiasts. Today we uncover the shocking truth of an empire's fall. In 1588, the vast Spanish Armada sailed out to conquer England, unstoppable. History credits brilliant naval tactics and fierce storms for crushing this truly massive fleet. But the real killer was something far smaller, hidden deep within the dark holds of their own ships. It was a catastrophic logistical failure, born from unseasoned wood and rotting water barrels. In the bright spring of 1588, King Philip II prepped his ultimate crusade. The powerful Spanish monarch was determined to erase Protestant England from the world map. He ordered the creation of the greatest naval force that the modern world had ever seen before. 130 massive galleons were heavily armed and ready for this glorious conquest. 30,000 proud soldiers and skilled sailors gathered at the port of Lisbon, ready for the war. They wore shining steel armor that beautifully reflected the bright sunlight of the southern coast. According to historical records, the Spanish believed that God himself would grant them victory. Admiral Medina Sidonia stood on his command deck, confident in their overwhelming strength. Elaborate wooden carvings and giant red crosses decorated these towering fortresses. It seemed absolutely impossible for the tiny island nation to survive this incoming wrath. The entire continent of Europe held its breath, nervously watching the unstoppable fleet leave. Thousands of white sails caught the strong wind as the magnificent armada began its long journey. Yet the most deadly threat to this empire was not waiting for them across the dark English Channel. Instead, a terrible disaster had already been sealed inside the dark cargo holds of their ships. Supplying an army of this massive size required an incredible amount of water and food. To store these vital provisions, the Royal Navy hastily manufactured heavy wooden barrels. But due to extreme time pressure, the builders used cheap green wood that had never fully dried out. This single, minor administrative decision would soon seal the tragic fate of 30,000 men. Would you sacrifice the basic survival needs of your men just to meet an impossible deadline? As the heavy galleons sailed further into the vast Atlantic, the green wood began to shrink and warp. Slowly but surely, the poorly constructed barrels cracked open under the massive ocean pressure. Precious drinking water started leaking out, completely soaking the miserable cargo holds below. What little water remained inside quickly stagnated, turning into a foul and undrinkable sludge. The intense summer heat deeply baked the wooden hulls, accelerating the tragic physical decay. Solid hardtack biscuits, the primary survival ration, quickly absorbed the nasty moisture. Within just a few short weeks, the vital bread supply became entirely infested with crawling pests. Starving soldiers were forced to consume this spoiled food in complete darkness just to stay alive. Without clean water to drink, severe dehydration rapidly weakened the once mighty royal troops. Then, the deadly outbreak of dysentery swept violently through the crowded and unventilated spaces. The magnificent shining armor was quickly cast aside as the suffering men tragically perished. Admiral Medina Sidonia watched in pure horror as his invincible force began to collapse. Historical documents reveal that the desperate admiral sent urgent letters begging for fresh food. However, no friendly ports were available to resupply the massive fleet in the deep ocean. The towering galleons, once symbols of extreme power, transformed into floating prisons of despair. Men who had dreamed of holy glory now desperately prayed simply for a single drop of clean water. Their lips cracked and bled, while violent fevers ravaged their exhausted and dehydrated bodies. They were physically broken and mentally shattered long before they fired a single heavy cannon. The unbearable stench of decay and rotting wood completely filled the damp air inside every ship. Rats freely multiplied in the dark corners, feasting on the massive piles of spoiled and abandoned food. This invisible, silent enemy proved far more devastating than any fully armed English ship. By the time they finally reached the English Channel, the Spanish Armada was already fading. They struggled to maintain their famous crescent defensive formation as the smaller English ships closed. The nimble English vessels easily outmaneuvered the heavy, slow-moving Spanish galleons. English cannons fired rapidly from a safe distance, easily tearing through thick Spanish wooden hulls. Sick and weakened Spanish gunners struggled desperately to reload their heavy bronze artillery. The difference in ammunition quality became obvious as English iron smashed through Spanish oak. Despite their horrific physical condition, the Spanish infantry bravely prepared for close combat. But the English wisely refused to board the giant ships, relying entirely on long-range guns. Frustration and deep despair heavily gripped the Spanish forces as they absorbed endless, punishing fire. They slowly realized that their grand, heavy fortresses were actually clumsy targets in these narrow waters. Imagine facing a deadly enemy you cannot catch, while slowly dying from thirst. What would you do? The situation grew utterly catastrophic when the Spanish fleet anchored off the dangerous coast. Under the dark cover of midnight, the English launched their most terrifying and highly destructive weapon. 8 old ships were tightly packed with black gunpowder, dry pitch, and highly flammable wooden materials. These floating bombs, known as Hellburners, were set completely ablaze and pushed directly into the wind. Massive pillars of orange fire violently ripped through the absolute darkness of the terrifying night. Panic immediately exploded among the sleeping Spanish sailors as the burning monsters approached. Desperate captains blindly cut the heavy anchor cables to escape the fast-approaching wall of fire. The impenetrable crescent formation was instantly shattered, leaving the galleons disorganized. Ships violently crashed into one another in the dark, destroying their own sails and breaking thick oars. The once proud and orderly fleet was now a scattered, chaotic mess of burning wood and falling men. When the morning sun finally rose, the mighty Spanish Armada was highly vulnerable and exposed. The English fleet ruthlessly closed in for the kill, pouring devastating cannon fire into the ships. Crimson stains marked the damaged wooden decks as the exhausted Spanish soldiers fought a losing battle. Water poured violently into the broken hulls, forcing the remaining men to constantly pump out the sea. At this critical moment, Mother Nature herself decided to deliver the final blow to the Empire. Powerful, unseasonal gale-force winds suddenly roared across the chaotic and stormy ocean battlefield. The fierce storm aggressively pushed the battered Spanish ships far away from the safety of the channel. They were violently driven straight towards the incredibly dangerous waters of the freezing North Sea. Admiral Medina Sidonia finally realized that the glorious invasion was now impossible. He made the heartbreaking decision to abandon the holy mission and order a total retreat. But returning home meant surviving a terrifying journey entirely around the harsh Scottish coast. Their leaking water barrels were completely empty, and their heavily damaged ships were barely afloat. The once magnificent Armada was now a broken fleet of starving ghosts sailing into a storm. They had survived the English cannons, but the ultimate punishment from the angry ocean began. The massive Spanish fleet was pushed violently into the freezing, dark waters of the brutal North Sea. Without any clean drinking water, severe dehydration finally broke the exhausted royal soldiers. The foul green sludge inside the rotting barrels became completely undrinkable for the fading men. A deadly epidemic of dysentery rapidly consumed the remaining crew in the dark, damp holds. Once proud warriors were reduced to miserable ghosts, helplessly trapped on sinking wooden ships forever. Starvation gripped the fleet as the pest-filled bread became their only desperate source of nourishment. Heavy autumnal storms began to viciously pound the fragile galleons along the rocky Scottish coast. The raging Atlantic Ocean showed absolutely no mercy to the terrified and sickly sailors. Huge waves crashed violently against the damaged hulls, tearing away broken masts and heavily torn sails. The freezing temperature deeply chilled the exhausted men who lacked proper winter clothing and gear. Desperate captains blindly navigated through thick, freezing fog with badly damaged steering equipment. Many ships were tragically separated from the main fleet in the endless darkness of the stormy sea. The rocky shores of Ireland quickly became a horrific graveyard for the doomed Spanish invasion force. Hidden underwater reefs violently ripped open the fragile bellies of the majestic wooden galleons. Massive wooden structures shattered into thousands of tiny splinters upon the unforgiving coastal rocks. Thousands of falling men desperately called for divine salvation as the freezing cold ocean swallowed them. Heavy steel armor, once a glorious symbol of royal pride, now dragged the tired soldiers to their depths. Those who miraculously survived the awful shipwrecks washed ashore on the cold and barren Irish beaches. Sick, freezing, and utterly defeated, the surviving troops collapsed onto the wet and muddy foreign sand. They were swiftly hunted down and met a tragic end by local garrisons along the dangerous shore. Only a small fraction of the mighty Armada ever managed to limp safely back to Spanish ports. Less than half of the legendary ships survived the horrifying journey across the violent ocean. The deeply traumatized survivors brought home a terrifying tale of absolute misery and ruin. King Philip locked himself inside his dark palace, completely shattered by the truly devastating news. The Invincible Spanish Empire suffered a humiliating defeat that deeply shocked the entire world. According to historical accounts, the grieving monarch blamed the violent weather for his tragic loss. He famously declared that he had sent his ships to fight against men, not against the mighty winds of God. However, modern scholars clearly argue that human error truly destroyed the massive expedition. The arrogant assumption of easy victory completely blinded the leaders to basic human needs. If the wooden water barrels were built properly, the terrible sickness might have been safely avoided. A healthy, well-hydrated fighting force could have maintained their tight defensive formation much longer. The rotting cargo holds proved to be far more dangerous than the deadly cannons of the English warships. The absolute horror of the Spanish Armada serves as a timeless warning for all future commanders. Grand strategic visions will constantly fail if the most basic human needs are completely ignored. Today, war is rarely decided solely by raw courage or brilliant tactics on the chaotic battlefield. Logistics, the quiet art of moving and feeding men, remains the true backbone of any successful campaign. A single bad decision made by a careless barrel maker in Spain doomed the largest fleet in the world. It reminds us that even the most powerful empires are fragile and prone to simple, careless mistakes. The shattered wooden remains of the majestic ships slowly rotted away on the lonely northern beaches. Thousands of nameless soldiers vanished beneath the dark, icy waves, leaving behind only rusted steel armor. The English proudly celebrated their miraculous deliverance from the deadly threat of foreign invasion. Queen Elizabeth emerged as a legendary figure, her glorious reign secured by the violent weather. But the silent tragedy of the Spanish sailors serves as a haunting reminder of terrible suffering. They were betrayed not by a lack of personal courage, but by the terrible arrogance of their own king. Their tragic sacrifice deeply changed the balance of global power for many long centuries to come. The myth of invincibility was drowned forever in the deep, cold waters of the dark English Channel. Next time you read about epic battles, always remember the hidden cost of those tiny, rotting barrels. As we reflect on this historical event, a profound question remains for us to carefully consider today. Was the Spanish defeat an act of God, or the inevitable result of human arrogance? Tell us below. If you enjoyed this dive, please like this video, share it, and subscribe for more epic historical tales.